Welcome to the Business Exam Room, a podcast brought to you by the company doctors, where we share stories and tips that we hope will inspire, motivate, and help improve the health of your company. I'm Eileen Frere, along with the founder and CEO of the company doctors, Randy McKinley.
Thanks, Eileen. In this episode, we're talking about not just finding a job, but landing your dream career, which is much different. To help guide us, we recently sat down with Mark Brenner, who filled in a lot of details we did not realize we were missing.
All right. Well, Mark Brenner is an expert in staffing and hiring. He's also an author. His book is It's Your Career. It's Your Choice. You can see it there. It's a step-by-step approach to finding the right career and then landing that right position in the right company. Mark, thanks so much for joining us here in the Company Doctors Business Exam Room.
It's my pleasure.
Choosing the right career. People don't do that for a variety of reasons. And can you speak from some of your experience of what led you to writing this book and about choosing the right career?
Well, I think the theme of the whole book comes down to choosing a career and not letting a career choose you. And the book is basically, in the beginning, it's my story. I had a plan of what I wanted to do. I ended up getting a job and then never went through with the plan. And now that I look back over these 40 plus years, I'm saying, what was I thinking? So it's very important to choose the type of work you want to do through your interests and through your passions. And then just do the research so that you can, and take the time to get it done.
But I would think this would be very common. Most people, they may come out of high school, start their college, have no idea what direction to go.
Yeah. So how do you choose that right career?
I think it's looking at where your passions are and what you want to do. Not so much. I've seen so many people come out of college or high school and take the first job that comes along. And 20 years later, they're looking back saying, I could have done more. I could have done something else if I just would have thought about it. And taking this to that level to really discussing with yourself the type of career that you would like to have. What would you like to do? When I do career coaching, and I have folks that don't really know what they want to do, my first question is, what do you want to do? And then we can work around that to try to find the right type of career that they're looking for.
Now, when it comes to looking for a career or for a job, one of the big parts is your resume. And while there are a lot of places that you can turn to write your resume or to get help with your resume, you say, no matter how hard it is, try to write your own resume.
Correct. First of all, and first and lastly, when you're in front of a potential employer and they're looking at your resume, if you haven't written it, they're not your words, and sometimes you can get a little confused on how to answer some of the questions. What I try to do with the folks I work with resumes is, number one, I tell them I won't write their resume, and I'd like them to put down what they, their experience, both from a quality standpoint and a quantity standpoint, and how it relates to the employer. There are four things that I tell them. The resume has got to be who you are, what you do, how you do it, and what you can do for a potential employer. So writing your own resume is quite important. I mean, I've seen, honestly, 20 people can show you how to write a resume, 20 people can write your resume, and 20 people will be right. What we're trying to do is to attract the attention of a potential employer.
So to that point, is the format, it sounds like the format is not as critical as the verbiage where it's coming from you, where they get the impression that you're actually saying the words. You wrote those words.
Okay, there's at least three types of resumes. Okay. There is a chronological resume, a functional resume, and a government resume. In my book, I don't address government resumes because those are resumes that basically ask you what you had for dinner last night and what you're going to be doing in 2 weeks. But The chronological resume is a resume that shows your places of employment, most recent first, and a description of the job, the description of the work that you have been doing. A functional resume lists all your characteristics of all the qualifications that you have, and then lists the jobs without descriptions under them. What I've created is my own template, which is a combination of the two. And the reasoning behind that is my experience with human resources is that you've basically got 15 lines and 45 seconds to attract somebody's attention. If you don't do it in that period of time, they're not going to read the rest of your resume. So what I've created is a template that shows an experience summary. And then we get into, if you have an advanced degree, we get into education. And then we talk about each job and a brief job description under the job.
So how long should your resume be? And like how far back should you be listing your experience?
Well, I've seen resumes that are 15 pages long.
Wow.
Well, that goes past the 15 lines, I think.
Yes,
That's what you were talking about.
I would suggest that 2 pages, if it gets to the 3rd page, it's okay. And the preference is 1 page. So 2-page maximum, and you can extend that a little bit. But if you can get everything that you need to say on 1 page, it's because you don't want to bore anybody with, your background and experience. As far back as you should go, I would say no more than 15 to 20 years.
One of the things I remember I was taught early on was, okay, your resume was 2 pages, and then the 3rd page was your references. Does that still hold, or should you have your references included with your resume?
One of the things I believe in on resumes is the expression I've come up with, word parsimony. Say as much as you can with as few words as possible. Don't add anything in there that's not necessary. Anybody being hired by any company is going to be reference checked. And therefore, there's no need to either put references on a resume or have even the expression that says references will be furnished upon request.
What happens if one of your references is very high up in the company and it might make a difference in catching the attention?
I still don't think it makes a difference. I think that they're going to look at your background and your experience, and you can, during conversations, whether they're networking conversations or during an interview, you can drop that name. But it's not going to make a difference on whether you're selected for an interview or selected to go on to the next step in the hiring process.
Okay, interesting. And what about cover letters? What do you think? Include them?
I'm not a big fan of cover letters. There's 3 types of cover letters. One is the one that you absolutely positively need to write. The second one is a request by the company to write a cover letter outlining the specific experience you may have. And the third one, which I don't get into, are the government cover letters, which basically is a mirror of your resume that you've sent to them. I have found in a lot of instances that cover letters can sometimes disqualify you from a job.
Really?
You can say so much in the cover letter that you allow for the potential employer to become disinterested in reading your resume. So the cover letter that you absolutely positively have to write should be very short and sweet. For example, it should say, "Dear so-and-so, please accept my resume for this particular job position. I feel I'm highly qualified and will be an asset to your company. I look forward to our next steps."
So short and sweet.
Short and sweet. It's more of a tease it's a tease to get them to look at your resume than it is a description of who you are. And finally, the other thing is, if someone is sending a resume in with a resume and it's an email, make sure the cover letter is attached to the resume. So there's only one attachment to open.
That's a good point.
You
Keep
don't
it simple.
you don't want an HR person having to open 2 attachments.
Perfect. And let me talk about an experience that we had recently with one of my good friends. And I think it's almost like the elephant in the room, which is these automated tracking systems or these softwares which seem to be looking at resumes. So long story short, good friend of mine, worked together, leaves the company. He's putting his resume out. It was a great resume, but instantly was getting just no phone calls, rejected. And then we took a step back and said, hold it, let's look at the job description. And then we started tweaking the resume for the job and started putting it out and actually started getting phone calls. And I think it's due to this automated tracking system or this software. Can you elaborate on this? I mean, this is a game changer out there. It's so different.
Applicant tracking systems have been around for 25 years. And even today, the concept is great. However, the technology has not caught up with it. And I can give you a couple instances where a while back I did some contract recruiting for a company, and they were looking for a specific type of person in customer service with specific background. It had that in the job title, but it had customer service in the job title. And the next day I received 300 resumes. Most of them were restaurant employees who did customer service. They worked at Nordstrom's and did customer service, but they had no background for what they were doing. The applicant tracking system is based on a keyword dynamic. So if there are keywords in the job description, and parenthetically, let me just say that most people looking for jobs don't read the job description, they read the job title. And they send their resume out on that title. And that's why there's a lot of that. Your friend who didn't get any responses, the resume went into a black hole.
Yeah, because I don't think anybody looked at it. I don't think the HR, anybody saw it, and it wasn't using the right words.
Well, I think that if you have to have the keywords on the resume, and that will get you at least through the first part of the screening process, where your resume will be perhaps in front of a human to read. But if there's 50 resumes sent into a company, and it's a segue into another area very quickly, and I guess we can talk about that later. But if your resume makes it through the first part, and say there's 25 resumes sitting in front of an HR person, and they start reading them, and they only want to find 5 people to interview, and these resumes are in an arbitrary order. They go through 10 resumes, find 5 people to interview, and your resume is number 11th, still doesn't get read. And that to me is where the networking part of it comes in.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that. Let's say you get past that and you actually make it to a job interview. What are some key questions that always seem to come up, but they're biggies, and if you're not prepared for them, they could really, really hurt you?
Well, first of all, I ask everybody that I've ever sent on an interview to prepare their own questions so that they can ask the questions of the interviewer. The secret behind interviewing is the fact that it's you, the employee, it's your interview. It's not just the company looking at you saying, oh, I might want to hire you. It's you saying, hey, do I want to work for this company? So it's a two-way street. And I think that eliminates some of the nervousness that people have in interviews if you realize that it's also your interview and you can make a decision whether or not you want to take that job.
Well, and I think you're right. People are very nervous when they walk into the interview. I think that's very helpful. That'll put them more at ease.
And one of the things that's happened over the last 20 years is, in the early 2000s, you could go on an interview, and if you had the technical competency to do the job, there was very little concern about your soft skills or your behavioral skills. They would go ahead and hire you based on, your technical skills. That's gone away. Today it is at least a 50-50 split between soft skills and technical skills. It's your cultural fit into the company. It's how you work, how you can work with the team in the company. And that becomes almost more important than your technical skills, because the technical skills can be learned, the behavioral skills cannot.
Oh, totally agree.
The technical questions are going to be technical questions, and you're going to be able to either answer them or not answer them. I suggest to people that if you don't know the answer, don't guess, because it will come back to haunt you. But the behavioral questions are what they have to prepare for. And, there are some standard behavioral questions like, tell me the best thing about yourself. What's one thing that you would like to change?
How do you answer that?
Well, you always try to, you turn it to the positive. So, for example, the best thing about yourself is I'm committed, I'm focused, I get the project done. The answer to what would you change is sometimes I'm too focused, but now I'm working on that, and now I'm able to multitask.
Wow, you should be a politician. That was really good.
Listen, I was just watching some of the hearings, and no, thank you.
You sure you didn't get that from the hearing? No, just kidding. There's something that you were going to elaborate on a little bit ago. You mentioned the word networking. How important is networking? I mean, personally, I think it's huge, but I want to hear from you.
Candidly, there are three important, after you've decided what you want to do and where you want to work, there are three important processes that you have to go through. And the resume is not the most important. If I were to give you 1, 2, and 3, it would be networking, interviewing, resume. Your resume becomes a validation of your networking conversations. So, for example, networking has become the way that you find the job that you want, because you have conversations with potential employers. And I am a big fan of LinkedIn and using LinkedIn to network with companies, to talk to managers, to find out not about a job so much as about the company, to find out if you in fact want to work there. And if you do, then you can go ahead and make that move into talking about, well, this sounds like a great company to work for. Who would I talk to?
Well, it sounds like you're almost flipping the script in a way where you're researching companies, you're getting to know the companies, and you're like, hey, you know what? When you get ready to hire, why don't you hire me?
Correct. And I cannot tell you how many people I have had network who have developed a mentor or a champion at the company through a networking conversation, and they have created a job for them. I just had one gentleman in the telecom industry seek out a company. He sought out the CEO of the company, started having conversations with him, and a month and a half later, he became the COO of the company.
Incredible.
Wow. That's actually really smart when you think about it. It's you're prepping and getting things set up for your future. You could be in something right now, but you start exploring these companies, you're reaching out to, developing that network, those relationships, which makes that network. And then now you're able to go move into potentially the career job you were looking for.
Correct.
I like too that the way you're explaining it, you're taking control.
Absolutely.
That it's not up to, oh my gosh, I need to find a job and please hire me, please hire me. You've switched it around that you need to hire me. You're the one in control.
Well, it's, look, there's two ways to go about it. I mean, I need a job. Okay. So go get a job. I'm looking for a career. Let me choose the career I want. And I think you do that by doing the research, by talking to the company and understanding this is your job search, it's your networking, and it's your interview, and it's the job that you've chosen. I tell people in interviews, don't be aggressive, be assertive. I think aggression can turn some people off.
And define that for the listeners. I think that's a good point because people misconstrue aggressive.
The example I'll give you is if you had an interview and they said, follow up with me in 4 days, and 2 hours later, you're sending out an interview. You're sending out a letter to somebody saying, hey, what do you think? How did it go? Instead of waiting 3.5 or 4 days, and if they don't get back to you, then you can reach out to them. I think it's just understanding. It's like don't be a pest.
Nobody wants a pest.
Yeah.
Mark, you have offered so much great advice, and there's plenty more in your book. I think your book is fantastic. It's an easy read. It's chock full of information. It's called It's Your Career, It's Your Choice. I think it's great for graduates, people just graduating,
Absolutely,
looking for their first job, maybe people who are looking to transition into a new career, or maybe people who are just wanting to try something new. I think it just is applicable to so many people. It's a great read. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Company Doctors Business Exam Room.
Yes, thank you.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you.
The information provided is intended solely for educational and cannot be used as a substitute for professional advice and/or information, as circumstances will vary from person to person and company to company. You should not act or rely upon information without seeking professional advice. Do not attempt any of the suggestions, actions, solutions, remedies, or instructions discussed on this podcast without first consulting with a qualified professional. The materials are not intended to be, nor do they constitute actionable professional advice. Transmission of this information is not intended to create a professional client relationship between the company doctors and you.